This is a video tutorial on the Happy spreadsheet. Happy stands for Home Again Properties Profit and Yield Spreadsheet. Okay, so this spreadsheet was developed as a tool to help analyze properties faster, just to be able to make offers quickly in this ever-changing market. So what I like about this spreadsheet is that I'm able to list the properties here, and it saves them for me. So it's kind of a database. So we often have sellers that maybe don't accept our offer, but then months later might come and have a change of heart and say, hey, about that property, are you still interested? So this is a great tool to go back and see how much we offered, and just to see, just to keep record of the property. So this looks like, well, not looks like, it is a lot of columns, and I'll go through and explain it, but basically the columns that you need to worry about in inputting data would be the ones that are in white. The columns that are in color all have formulas in them, so that's going to do the math for you. So I'm going to go ahead and start by putting in a property, and I like to put the date of the property when I analyze this property, because like I said, you might have seller come back, might come back in July and say about that property. So I can search for the property here, and I can see when I made that offer and at what price. So that's where the date's important. The status, I like to know if it was an MLS deal or if it was an off-market deal, is what I like to put here. So for this particular property that I'm going to use was an off-market deal. On the status, you can also put maybe if it was a particular wholesaler, or if you want to add additional notes. So here's my street number. And then I'll move to the next one. I'm going to put the street name. So now I have my address in there. In San Antonio, Texas, which is the market that we focus on, zoning is important. So I know there's other parts that zoning is not nearly as important, but in San Antonio it is. And as we move into small multifamily, we have learned that there are several small multifamily properties that are not zoned properly. So at some point they were converted into a duplex, triplex, even a fourplex, but they never went through the trouble of rezoning it with the city. And that's an issue, as we learned the hard way, when you go for regular bank financing. So now we always check for the zoning, and you can learn the different zonings in your area, but for San Antonio and R4 is just a regular single family zoning. And then I always check to make sure that it's not in a floodplain. We don't ever buy properties that are in any kind of floodplain. Insurance is expensive, and just the risk involved. It's just not a property that we're willing to purchase. Because we are so focused on cash flow, we want to keep our expenses as low as possible, and typically insurance is not favorable when we're trying to figure out our cash flow number. So the asking price, we always try to get ballpark of what the seller is trying to get for the property, or maybe it's an MLS property. So if you know the asking price, you can put that there. If you don't, you can skip it. The offer price, we're going to go ahead and skip it. That's something we're going to play with later. So here is repairs. So repairs, you're going to put the whatever the repair cost may be to rehab the property. So maybe you're at the initial stages and you don't know the repair cost, so it's just maybe a phone conversation or maybe pictures. So you can estimate on there with the information you have, and then you can always come back after you see the property and put a hard number on there on what your repair budget is. Typically when I'm looking at properties, let's say it's on the MLS and I can see pictures, if property looks like it's in good condition, I'm going to estimate about $10 a square foot. If it needs some updating, I'm probably going to put about $20, $25 a square foot. If it's a total remodel, like new kitchen or bathrooms or both, I'm going to estimate about $30 to $35 a square foot. Keep in mind that's not taking into account the big ticket items like a new roof or a new HVAC or foundation, or those big ones would be, you would want to include those in there as well. So for this particular property, it was $25,000 was the repair estimate. So as you can see, some numbers popped up. So if I don't have a price in there yet, so right now my closing cost, if you look at the formula up here, so my closing cost is $1,250, but there's a formula up here. So this closing cost is not accurate yet. After we put the price on here, then it'll calculate. So if we were to buy this property at $25,000, this would be what the total purchase price would be. So we're going to keep going into the little white columns here. So I know my annual taxes, after I looked at the county records, are $29.74 annually. So if you notice here, you had another number pop up here. So this calculates the taxes monthly. This estimate is just a quick reference, just for really quick comps. Obviously, they're not 100% accurate, but we still like to go on there and just see what this estimate thinks it is, especially if it's like in a cookie cutter neighborhood where all the houses are pretty similar. We know it's going to be ballpark, but we know that so this estimate's important when I'm trying just to see if this is a property worth even looking at a little deeper. If this estimate's way off, the numbers just are way off, then it's not worth considering. But if I put this estimate, I can just go in there and just give me, it's the fastest way I have found. You might have another faster way. So by all means, you can replace that column with whatever, method you like to use. So the ARV is more of an accurate comp. This is when I do my long comps, and you use whatever comps that you feel, this is not a class on how to run comps. So however you feel the most confident in running your comp. So this is the after repair value. So this is what this house would sell for after we repaired it, after looking at good hard numbers, good hard comps. So let's say this house, after we repair it, is worth $130,000. This estimate was about $120,000. So now I have these numbers pop up. So what are these numbers? For us, we have several different lenders that we work with, and they have different products. So one product is the one lender will lend up to 80% of the appraised value. We have another lender that'll lend 75% of appraised value, and then another product that'll lend 65% of appraised value. The 65% of the appraised value, we found the lender that would loan that amount for properties that are not zoned properly. So in San Antonio, again, that comes in handy. So we just know that that's the product that we need to use if we're trying to buy a triplex, for instance, and that was zoned single family. We had to use that product. So now it does the math for me. So this is the mortgage calculator. So this is principal and interest. Now here I have it at the formula. This is the formula that you want to save, maybe write it down in case, because I did not freeze these formulas on here so you can manipulate them. So I highly recommend that you write this formula down, keep it somewhere safe, maybe take a picture of it, because this formula is what calculates the mortgage payment, your principal and interest. So 4.5 is what we were getting on this. Now, unfortunately, they're going up so high, but if you can still qualify for conventional financing, you can probably still get the 4.5. 75% of ARV of the appraised value. So let's say you still qualify for a conventional loan and you can get it at 4.5% interest rate for 30 years. That would be your formula. Now let's say your lender says, oh, no, it's at 5%. So you would just change that 4% to 5% and then hit enter. And then it does the math for you. So you go back to that one and you're at 5%, so that's your payment. And you can either copy and paste and go all the way down. So you just do, you just copy that formula and then you would paste it to your other cells. So I'm going to go back and change it to 4.5. Maybe you have a lender that'll do 4.5, but maybe we'll only do 4.5, but only will do it for 15 years. So here you would change the 30 to 15 years. So that's a way to manipulate the formula, and it does the math for you. So whatever loan products you're using, I would go ahead and just put it on there so you can do the math quickly. So I'm going to change it back to 30 years because that's what we're getting. So that's your principal and interest payment at 75%, principal and interest payment at 65%. So it's pulling, these are your loan amounts right here. So it's pulling the data from these cells right here. These are my 3 different loan amounts depending on the product that I'm going to use. So I know my insurance for this property is $58, and I know that because we've been using our insurance agent for a long time, and so we know approximately how much each property is going to be insured for. So I would recommend just talking to your insurance agent and getting an estimate on approximately how much insurance would be per door for when you're, so that way you have a number to use when you're analyzing properties. And I would ask him or her, your insurance agent, how much it would be for a single family, a range, right, for a single family house or a multifamily as well. So this is my utilities monthly. For single family, usually that's not an issue, but as we move into the small multis, I do, sometimes if they're on 1 meter, for example, that's where you would put your average monthly utility cost. But this is a single family house. I'm going to put 0. I'm not going to pay for any utilities. The 10% is what we estimate for expenses, what we set aside every month from each property just for repairs, expenditures, vacancies, and 10% is low. And the reason it's low is because we have been doing this for a long time, so that reserve budget has grown because this is money we set aside every single month. So once our reserve budget got to a really comfortable amount, then we felt comfortable reducing that. But if you have less properties, or if your reserve amount is not where you're comfortable, then I would recommend upping that amount until you get to a really safe figure. Things to consider too is the age of the property. If you have an older home that might need more repairs, maybe increasing that. We used a BRRRR strategy, and with the BRRRR strategy, because we are going to rehab it, rent it, and refinance it, we try to do all of the big capital expenditures up front. So if it needs a new roof in the next 3 to 5 years, or if it needs a new HVAC in the next 3 to 5 years, we go ahead and do it when we buy it. Initially, year 1, because that way when we go to refinance it, it'll help the appraisal. It'll help insurance, so it'll help us cash flow a little bit better. A new roof helps with our insurance cost. And when we refinance it, now it's financed into the house. So now the tenant is going to pay for those big capital expenditures. And now we don't have a big bill due in 3 to 5 months that's going to kill our cash flow for that property. So that's been a strategy we've used now for a while, and it has really come in handy. So we feel very comfortable with just setting aside 10% of our entire portfolio every month into a separate savings account. Then other expenditures could be maybe a landscaper. Maybe it's for example, we have a fourplex that none of the tenants are going to mow the lawns. Like, who mows it? So we did have to hire a lawn maintenance company to handle that expense. So that is an other expenditure. And then we have here, so once you have your other expenditure, now I have these, each loan products now have PITI plus. That little plus includes the 10%, it includes utilities, and it includes any other additional expenditures. So now this is my total bill for that property every single month. Now I know that my market rent when we bought this property was at $1,200. So if the market rent is $1,200, now this is what I'm really looking for, is how much is this property going to cash flow? So at this product, it's going to cash flow $116. At this product, it's going to cash flow $280 a month. And at this product, that's going to cash flow $313. So obviously, the more capital you leave in the property, the more you're going to cash flow each month. So it just depends on what your goal is. If you're more comfortable, if you're comfortable leaving that capital in there, or if you want trying to get as much cash out of it to go reinvest it, whatever your situation may be, or maybe whatever loan products available to you, is what you would have to go to. But this is really the one we're looking at the most. So this is after principal, taxes, insurance, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and then any additional costs, utilities, setting aside 10%, everything we can possibly think of is gone. So this is the money that we can count on each month from that property. Then I have a few other metrics here. So NOI does not account for any debt service. So this would be your what that property, the total rent minus expenses, not to include the debt service. And this is a cap rate. Now, cap rate's not important with single family. It kind of really throws it off. So it's not, but I still have it in there just because it's fun to look at, and it's applies more for your bigger properties. But I still like to see what's on there. So cash on cash return is important with single family. So as you can see here, they're negative. What in the world does that mean? Well, if we go back here and look at the property, if we purchase it right here, we have 75%. So we haven't put a price yet. So we need to do that first. So right here is $97.5. That's the product that I'm going to try to shoot for. So that is how much the bank will give me after we rehab it. So if I know that the bank will give me $97,500, and I know I need at least $25,000 in repairs, and I'm going to have some closing costs, then how much could we offer seller? So let's say if we offered them $75,000 for this house. Our total purchase would be $105,000, and the bank would give me $97.5. So that means that the difference here from $97.5 to $105 would be our cash out of pocket that we would have to pay at closing. It's still a pretty nice deal because now you're getting a property for, what is that, $7,000, right, approximately. So you're buying a house for $7,000, but we like to BRRRR it, and BRRRR it means zero money out of pocket. So let's say I'm gonna say, well, no, let's see, what do I need to offer this seller to get to as close as possible to the $97.50. So at $70,000, I'm still at $99,000. So man, it's like I need to go a little bit further down. So if I offer $68,000, then my total purchase price, right after repairs and closing costs, is $97,650. Now for closing costs, I want to mention that I just put 5%. And it's really different for everyone, whatever your closing cost estimate may be. For us, how we came up with 5% is when we initially buy them cash, The closing costs are very cheap because it's a very easy transaction for the closing company. So it's usually about, I don't know, 1-2% at the most. Now, when we go to refinance it, anyone that's refinanced properties knows that there's some fees involved. So that's where we came up with an approximate number of 5% for closing costs. But you can change that, depending on your own situation. But that's what we feel comfortable is a good estimate. So with that, right, offer price, repairs, and closing, it's $97,650. It's almost identical to this number. So now I know that that's pretty much my top number to make my offer. But even with that number, I still want to get to know the seller, and I want to know the seller's situation, and I want the seller to hopefully tell me what it is that they're trying to achieve with this property, how much they're maybe trying to net. Every seller has a different situation. So hopefully I've gotten information from the seller's situation, and then with this number, and then I can make an offer. So it doesn't have to be the 68. If you're willing to leave some cash in it, you still buying a house for $7,000-$10,000. It's a lot better than putting the whole 20% down on a traditional loan. Is one option, or maybe you're able to get it for less than the 68. And in this case, the seller told us how much they wanted for the house, and it was less than our 68 number. So we definitely moved on it quickly. So now if we go back here again and look at our cash on cash return, so you can see at the 80%, we have negative 21%. So how is it that we have a negative? Well, if you look here, if we were to go with that loan product at this price, the bank would give us up to $104,000. So with $104,000, and we go to closing, when we go to closing, we're at $97,000. Well, now we're going to walk away from the closing table with a little bit of cash in our pockets. Now, with the 75%, right, it's almost a break even. So now this is a really high cash on cash return. And with the 65%, we're going to have to, if we go with that loan product, we're at $91,000. So we're having to leave a little bit of money out of pocket. What is that? About $6,000 out of pocket. So that's still a great cash on cash, strong cash on cash return if you want to use that metric. But I want to point out again, it's a lower cash on cash than these. However, you're cash flowing more. This, right, you leave with a little bit of cash in your pocket at closing, but you're going to cash flow less each month. So it really just depends on what your goals are, where you're at in your investment journey, if you need that capital to redeploy it, or if you're just trying to get to a cash flow number, that's really up to you. But you are able to manipulate this data as much as you would like. Maybe you need a 70% column and you don't have an 80 or 65. You can delete that. So right here, you would just go and change that to a 70, and now it'll calculate 70%, and I would just go and change that to a 70 as well so it matches. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope you attended our class. We would love to connect with you on Home Again Properties, homeagainpropertiessa.com, and we would love for you to subscribe to our blog. Thank you for listening.